We will start to bring everybody's allegiance to full strength with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right. The first order of business is to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made to approve the agenda as written right here and seconded by Kelsey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The agenda is approved. Next order of business is approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
To approve the minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion has been made to approve the minutes as written here and seconded by Ed. Motion made by Jordan. Is there any discussion? The only thing I had wrong was that to adjourn, it said everyone voted to adjourn and I voted nay. And so that's the only point, but I can stipulate, let it go. Okay, I guess. All those then in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The minutes of the last meeting of June 20th was approved. Next order of business is the petition number VOA 722-24, number 1, and of Tim and Peggy Mormon.
Afternoon, Board of Adjustment members.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, as you stated, applicants here are Tim and Peggy Mormon, and they're requesting 6 variances for a proposed garage and for an existing deck. This project has a lot of moving pieces to it. We've got some pre-zoning development in this area. There are many older homes that were there before zoning was in effect. The lots also in this area tend to be smaller. It is a substandard lot, both in terms of the zoning district, the underlying district, the community development district that is, and the overlay showing as Shoreland district. A deck was built between the years of 2016 and 2022. Deck moves a little closer to the town road, which the house is accessed from, and that is what requires the variance request for that. And a proposed garage addition is also at play, and 5 variances are required for that. So to list them all here in one place, we've got a variance to reduce the rear yard distance. That would be from the property line. We have a variance to reduce the front yard distance as measured from I-90, and you see I've asterisked that, and there'll be some conversation on that later. There was a discussion of that in your staff reports as to whether that should be applied. The board could decide that it should be applied and consider it, or you could determine that it shouldn't be applied and we just dispatch that request. Number 3 would be a variance from the minimum front yard distance as measured from Riverview Drive. That would be for the deck. Number 4 would be a variance to reduce the minimum setback distance between a septic absorption area and a structure. That would be for the garage. The 5th would be to exceed the maximum impervious area of a shoreline lot. So as I said, this is in the shoreline district. Within that district, the ordinance stipulates a maximum percentage of a lot that can be impervious. And then finally, number 6, to expand development on a post-1996 lot without 2 soil treatment areas. In large extent, the ship has already sailed on that. The reason why it's before you today is because they're looking to expand the amount of construction on a lot, which thereby reduces the amount of area that would be potentially available for a future septic system. So the existing deck, here they're seeking a variance of 44 feet to reduce the setback of 100 feet, the minimum of 100 feet from the town road. Here you see on the left, the imagery before the deck was built that you're seeing there, somewhat blurry, but you're seeing some concrete steps. And then on the right, you see the deck that was placed there. The steps were approximately 62 feet from the center line. The deck is approximately 56 feet from the center line. Concrete steps are a permitted encroachment, meaning we would not apply a setback to them. So technically speaking, when the steps are on the front, the house was set back to the point that the structure began, not the decks. I'm sorry, not the steps. Decks are not a permitted encroachment, meaning we would apply a setback standard to decks. The second request here is the proposed garage addition. Here we're looking for the 5 variances, and I have them all listed here, but I'm not going to reread them because I just went through them, and we'll go through them one at a time here in the slides that come. So first, the addition would be approximately 12 feet from the rear property line here, and you're seeing this is kind of the aqua turquoise highlighted arrows with a dimension next to them on your screen there. That would be the dimension that we're talking about on each slide. You see the existing structure in the bluish colored polygons there, and then you see the red crosshash polygon, which represents the dimensions of the proposed addition. The black lines there are the county's beacon parcel lines. There was some conversation in your staff reports about the need to rely on something when we're applying a yard setback. All applicants are not asked to do a certified survey, but we must rely on something. So in this case, we are relying on those parcel lines, on the original plat, and on statements from the applicants to come up with the approximated parcel lines. Second request here relevant to the proposed addition would be the setback from the center line of I-90. And here you're seeing again that highlighted linear line with the dimension there of plus or minus 126 feet from that center line. So some consideration as to whether that even applies. And the way that I presented the staff report to you, I'm saying that it would be the board's purview here to decide this doesn't apply, this might apply, but an exemption qualifies, or this is properly before the board for a variance.
Can I ask a question on it?
Please.
It says on here, the front yard distance, so wouldn't that be on the other side of the house? Is
There-
that what you're determining?
That's exactly what I'm trying to highlight.
So if you take the distance from the front of the house to I-90, how many feet is that? Does it fall within the 200
Oh,
feet?
interesting. I did not look at it that way. We're measuring the
Yeah.
front of the house to the,
Front of the house, yeah.
no, I don't believe it would. I believe
Okay.
that the setbacks overlap.
Okay,
But I guess I want to stress my statement of belief. I'm not certain of that.
Heads, I don't know.
The setbacks, excuse me, the setbacks for the county road and the interstate they cross over each other right through the middle of the center of our house, which was there before Interstate 90 was ever even thought of. It was 1900, so
Okay,
I even don't know if County Highway 61 was there or not, but
okay.
yeah, it was, yes.
So
Okay.
yes, I believe they do overlap. And I guess on that point, I'll clarify, and I'm probably well aware of this, but how that would work would be the current house in its current location is entirely compliant because it is a pre-zoning legal non-conforming structure. If they were to replace in the same location, that wouldn't require a variance, but the variance is triggered because they're proposing to go closer to the feature which the setback might apply. So in this case, the language, the requirement falls under a heading called front yard setback, but obviously this is not the front yard, it's the rear yard. So the question would be, is it even applicable? If the answer is no, that would mean that there would be no setback on a rear yard when you have a through lot that has a road on either side, kind of in all instances. If the answer is yes, then we could move on to the exemptions, because there are some exemptions that could become controlling in this case also, and that has to do with averaging in an existing developed area where you look at what the setback distances of the existing structures in the area adjacent to the subject property are. I'll note also that the ordinance does contemplate an intersection. So it does say when you're at an intersection here and you have two roads, you apply the setback from, either road at the intersection, and that the old ordinance from 1970 did contemplate a through lot. So you could deduce from that somebody intentionally made a decision at some point when they transitioned from the old language to the new language to not continue that language you see at the bottom there that is in the 1970s, section 18, subdivision 62F on double frontage lots, the required front yard setbacks that we provided on both streets. If that language were in our ordinance currently, there would be no question, it would be clear. It's the fact that it was removed and replaced with different language. So in this case, if we're looking at front, sides, rears, this is how I approached the orientation when I provided the analysis you received in your report. That the front yard is facing the river, rear yard is facing the interstate, and then the respective sides on either side. So here's the language I guess I've been talking about, is that the setback from a road lives within a subpart called front yard setbacks, front yard regulations, which kind of is a touch ambiguous. On the left there, you see what those setbacks would be. So if this house were facing I-90, that were the front, it would have to be 200 feet back. It's not, it's the rear in this case. Now we have some exceptions. So assuming that we think that it should apply, could we rely on one of these exceptions to dispatch this requirement? When I initially put together your staff reports, I read block as meaning block in a platted subdivision like lots and blocks. When I dug further into it later, it's more nuanced than that in the ordinance. The actual language here, if in a block where two or more dwellings have been erected gaining road frontage from the same roadway, so, that does not apply because nobody's getting their road frontage from I-90. So we move to B, except that in a block where two or more structures have been erected facing the same roadway, the setback for the proposed structure shall be determined by the average setback of existing structures located within 250 feet on both sides of the structure. So in this case, if you're willing to say that facing could mean the rear, which one might be, then you could rely on this and do some averaging to see if the setback could be reduced if we believe that the house is in the same block as the existing infrastructure.
What do you think?
Well, I've got a couple slides in it that might shed some light on that for you. What I'm trying to do here, though, is I'm trying to tee these up for you all to make that determination and not me to tell you what it should be. Boy, we've got, we can't quite see the top there, but that is our definition of blocks. And so within a subdivision that is entirely bounded by streets. So you see that's highlighted. I thought that was the important language there. Entirely bounded, meaning streets on both sides. In this case, if you go sufficiently far enough in either direction, you'll encounter that eventually, but it's not in the immediate vicinity. And then the other language that we could rely on here is where we're talking in the subdivision ordinance, in a conversation of blocks that talks about where no existing plat controls. We do have a plat in this case. It is over 100 years old, however. So here's that plat. This is what they laid it out. This is pre-I-90. This is 1887 is when they put this together. So it is platted. It is a platted subdivision, but it is a very, very old platted subdivision with lots and blocks. So block means a block and a lot in a platted subdivision. Well, there's your block right there. There would be no other houses you could rely upon. These folks are occupying most of that block. Now, I'm going to shoot back up a couple slides so if you see here, if we're looking at block meaning bounded by streets on either side, get one zoomed out a little bit more. Well, in this case, that plat would have said there are streets. The garage addition is actually on a platted street on that 1887. And if you move slightly to the north, there would have been another street proposed by that 1800s plat. There are no streets there. So in that sense, it's not bounded by streets on either side. So one could say that, well, we're going to average based on that bounding element, and there aren't streets that bound it, expanding that 250 foot distance that we could average within. If we were to average, it would need to be set back 125 feet, the variance wouldn't be necessary. If the front yard setback doesn't apply to a rear yard, the variance is not necessary. There's no standard they need to hit. So,
Aaron, what's that white line, light line? Is that the street that was abandoned? Behind, in the rear, next to the green, across all the lots?
can I give you a look at this one? So those, you're talking this?
Nope, nope, right next to the lot, that line, that white line. There was a street abandoned, right? And it was added to the lot? Yeah, right there.
No, I believe that's the railroad, correct?
No, this
No.
line right here,
Yeah,
that's the interstate's drainage system.
Okay.
So
Oh.
it's,
Okay.
there's a fence right here. This is a cement drainage
Oh,
system
okay.
from the interstate.
Okay. And so, there was a street what street was abandoned and added to the lot? It was a side street or?
Yeah, so if you look at this,
Yeah.
there are, lots and blocks that were platted out
Okay,
that were never
right, yeah,
developed, and the streets around here were never developed either. This would be the existing town road,
right.
the line here, and then here's where I-90 is right now.
Oh,
None of
okay.
these cross streets
Okay,
were ever
yeah,
developed. And then in 2002, the town vacated the portion of the cross street that the garage is proposed on.
okay,
So it's not even on I guess the plat hasn't been amended, but it's not a public
right.
street any longer.
Yeah. Okay,
So I guess I was hoping at some point, and it might be after I'm done presenting, that you all have a conversation about how you feel you should approach that.
right,
Last bit of information on that. So I did a cursory search of how this has worked in terms of past practice. There was a variance, you all granted a variance in 2021 for somebody up near Ridgeway, Watoka area to build a shed within the setback required from I-90. So in that case, you did apply it. The shed that you see, quicker way to jump back to an overview. The shed you see in the bottom portion of the slide there, that was permitted in 2013, was not applied in that instance. So it's gone either way. It looks like in past practice. I'll stress that I did not do a comprehensive search of every possible instance of this. It was fairly cursory.
so technically I-90 is not a street. I mean, by definition, a street.
Well, if you look here at our table, and that's out of the ordinance,
Uh-huh.
I-90 would be that principal arterial. So it would require a 200-foot setback from the center line according to that. I don't know that there are any instances of somebody having their house facing I-90 where that applies, but it probably does apply in some instances on Highway 61, which I believe is the only other roadway with that classification.
So in the ordinance where it's talking about streets, using as streets, it's assumed that I-90 is a street?
Well, I mean, the controlling language.
I mean,
would be-
I know that for setback I-90, but for the language of the street, bounded by streets,
Oh, sure.
yeah, so essentially that doesn't exist in the back. I mean, there's two different things, so as far as the street,
Yeah.
there's no street there
Yeah, that language is
in the Winona County zoning.
for the averaging, if you're going to do that
Yeah,
setback
like
averaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at.
I think in terms of the front yard setback, the second item there, 4.2, that would be the language that requires the front yard setback on a typical application of that.
Look at the whole town, none of it meets that criteria.
All right, let's see if we can find where we left off. So here, I kind of just went through this, your potential courses of action as I've laid them out for you. Okay, moving on to the next request for the garage addition. They're proposing to place the addition approximately 15 feet from a septic absorption area. Requirement is 20 feet. This is site layout when that was installed. You know, when I use GIS and draw in the dimensions of the drain field and the proposed structure, I get a distance that's closer than the 15 feet. And I'll just note that I did discuss that with the applicants and encourage them to chat with the septic installer to get a definitive distance. So I guess I'll just say that they are asking for 15 feet. I think it might be more like 7 feet, but without a septic professional to tell you exactly what it is, it would be hard to say. If you're looking to grant and you want to make sure that it all works, I would encourage you to consider the 7-foot distance, not the 15. And then if it happens to be 15, no harm, no foul. This just shows that more zoomed out overview of the at grade with the crosshatch area would be the absorption area. That's where the setback is applied from. Okay, the impervious. So they're slightly over the impervious area. The maximum allowable would be 25%. Gravel counts as impervious. What you're seeing there is the purple polygons are the estimated areas. And those include things that the applicant is indicating that they would be willing to remove to bring the project more in line with the standards. So you'll see there's a driveway, you see vehicles parked on the southern end. That would all be removed. There's a kind of a temporary shed that would be considered impervious, that would be removed. This is a combination of calculations based off of aerial imagery, as well as information provided by the applicants, and have denoted what came from where on the left-hand side there. And then finally, to expand development on a post-1996 lot lacking 2 soil treatment areas. So we talked about this as a plat from the 1800s, or how is it a post-1996 lot? It's because they merged the lot with some area that was vacated from that public street in 2002. That created a new property description, which is technically a new lot. Why do we think there's not a second soil area? Because you granted a variance in 2020. To allow a septic that doesn't meet some setbacks. And in that, one of the findings was that no other area on the property has been identified, which can accommodate an STS that utilizes on-site soil-based treatment. Another finding from that 2020 variance, finding number 4, included language saying this property was developed during a time when SSTS was not given as much thought and consideration as it should have been and as now is. This reflects the lack of knowledge and technical expertise of the area in which the area was developed and the lack of regulatory framework to plan for future wastewater needs on the property. So really what that post-1996 lot standard does is gives the county the regulatory framework that you all recognize was important in 2020 to make sure that somebody has area to replace a septic should they need to.
Just because I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Should it have had 2 drainage spots, but in 2020 we were okay with just 1? Or is this something that
Well,
is not really necessary due to technology now that they need 2 spots?
yeah, my opinion there is that in 2020, they weren't proposing any more development.
Okay.
So they were taking a lot as it existed and looking to fix a non-compliant septic system. So I don't think it should have been included then. The reason it's included now is because the site where the garage sits is soil that's pretty much the last spot where there's open soil in the lot where you could someday put a septic. However, the location of the well likely would, prevent that under current rules.
Okay.
So conversation now of bundling requests. So these guys are asking for 6 different variances. How should you as a board consider that? So I think what you've normally done in the past is you make a single set of findings and that applies to every single thing they're asking for. In this case, that might be tricky because the septic system setbacks from the proposed garage are quite different than the deck setbacks from the road. It might be hard to draft a single finding that would cover the breadth of everything they're asking for. So you could then do a bundled approach whereby you're going to, you could then do an individual approach whereby you're going to consider every variance on its own and go through your findings for everything they're asking for. In this case, that would be 6 variances. We'd be here all afternoon, so that might not be the best approach either. And some of them may be sufficiently similar where you could consider them together and make one finding that would apply to both requests. Or you could do a hybrid, and that's what I've teed up for you here is, considering the deck as one request and then bundling everything associated with the garage addition as the second. Again, this is something that I can't tell you how to do it. You would need to do it. And I'm hoping that perhaps after my conversation or my presentation here, you'll have a conversation about how you wish to approach that.
Aaron, could you point out what was different in the latest findings with the staff report here? Because I studied the original one and the one that was put out revised. And so the final revision is what, do you know what was changed in it offhand?
Yes. Could I go through this and then I'll jump to that at the end?
Okay, good.
Yep. So here, again, it's up to the board, but what I presented to you is a hybrid approach where you consider the request twice, once for the reduction of the setback distance off the town road for the deck, and then once for the reduction of all the other things necessary for the garage addition. Okay, zoning information. So this is the community development district. You'll see that zoning in a lot of the previously developed areas in the county that are out in the countryside. And the shoreline overlay district is applicable. Here you've got some oblique imagery of the parcel. You see the existing development is the turquoise cubes and the red cube is the proposed development. See, there's a steep embankment as you go up to Interstate 90, and then you get a kind of a sense of the other development in the area. As the applicants have said, the setbacks, if you apply that setback off I-90 and then apply the setback off the road, they overlap each other, and their placement of their development in their lot is very similar to the development on many of the other lots in the neighborhood. About a half an acre lot. It's a through lot, meaning it's got a road on either side. And it's in a predominantly residential area. And then here are some photos of the site. So it was laid out in the original plat of Dresbach City. It's of course not a city, it is a township, which is why we're zoning it. The house was built around 1900, although I believe that may be just a catch-all number from the assessors. You see that number come up a lot. It's a very old house. And then the garage was permitted in 1978. The house and the breezeway there connect to the garage. That breezeway you see in the picture on the right, it's connected to the garage.
Where is the sewing?
The sewing room, I let them speak to the current location of the sewing room, but as I understand it, the proposed sewing room would be on the ground floor of the addition.
Of the garage addition?
Of the garage addition. So the permitting history in 78, we permitted an attached garage. The house, of course, wasn't permitted because it predates zoning. There was a variance in 2020 to reduce the setback requirements from a drain field and a property line and a drain field and a structure and a septic tank and a structure. They then received their septic permit to install that, and they drilled a new well, I believe, as part of that septic replacement. No comments were received from town agencies or public. And then the standard boilerplate recommendation that you will always receive from me. You should consider all the materials and testimony before making findings to support your decision. Staff analysis provides guidance for drafting findings, and the county attorney's office has prepared draft findings for your consideration. And should the committee recommend approval, proposed conditions are offered for your consideration. I have a copy of the findings.
Oh, yeah, the board said no comment. But we did get a.
See, maybe you can help me with this too.
Sure.
But, so near the end of your findings, you'll see that it's set up for the dual hybrid approach where there's two bundles. So there would be two approves and deny sections, one for requests 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and one for number 3. And then finding number 4, was that on this request or was that the other one?
Finding number 4 as to requests 4 and 6. in this one.
Okay. Okay, so then on page 3 of your findings, these are the variance requests that are related to septic. Variance requests that are related to septic are subject to 2 sets of variance standards. So they're subject to the common ones you see in chapter 5, and then chapter 13, the septic chapter, also outlines 5 findings you must make when you're granting a variance to septics. Number 4, as you currently have it, is different than it was initially. Initially, we had presented that as they're asking for a prohibited use. That is not the case. The use they're asking for is not prohibited. So the updated version you have states that.
And that's because I misinterpreted the staff recommendation.
Okay. So any questions for Aaron?
Yes,
Okay.
Aaron, just in general with the, thank you for a very excellent presentation of a very complicated number of requests.
Thank you.
With the information that we received online, it looked like requests 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, many of the requirements that must be met for a variance to be granted are not met. That's how I read the initial staff report.
That is our analysis and our recommended findings. You of course need to make your own findings.
So in a situation where we have, this is a general question. In a situation where we have a number of findings that don't seem to support the granting of variance, is there a policy at the staff level that requires you to send out findings that support the variance request versus the other way around? Or do you ever send out 2 sets of findings?
Well, you're aware likely my tenure here is not
Yes.
very long. So in my time here, I have not sent out 2 sets of findings. In my tenure in other jurisdictions, we have not done that either.
So the question I have is, in a situation where a number of the provisions that must be adhered to for a variance to be granted, at least on their face, do not seem to be satisfied. When that happens, my question then is, why does staff send out findings that would indicate that they are being satisfied?
When in fact they're not.
Correct.
I guess I'm not in a position to, I hope I have not done that. And I guess I'm not in a position to answer that question for.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I may be able to. So I believe the instances where the criteria are stated to have been met are not, misrepresenting what the staff thinks. Those are indicating what they meant. The ones that you're, I think, characterizing as not saying it's not met are ones that are very close in terms of whether it's met or not met, and deals with issues in which there's vague language when you take our ordinances against the state statute. And the reason that comes into you then is that, you have to look at what's reasonable and what's past practices, and basically try to come up with a decision that's reasonable, which is about the best you could do if you don't have a definitive law that's going to tell you yes or no. By comparison, for analogy, it's compared to like when you pump gas and it says you must remain near gas pump while pumping. Well, if you're standing right there, it's clear that you're near it. But if you're 10 feet away, are you near it? If you're inside the building, you're probably not near it. But somewhere between the building and there's some place where you're too far. Well, the law doesn't define that because it depends on the layout and the situation. That's kind of what you have here. And it'd be very important to consider past practice and what's fair and equitable and as much as you can analogize to other similar decisions you've made.
You're asking about the ones that are essentially a reasonableness, but in my analysis, I've provided you some analysis on the required finding, but in the actual draft findings, it says board shall determine. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, yep.
And let me just, final question to you. Are the paper copies of the staff report, are they identical to the digital staff report that we received before the meeting?
I believe so, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Aaron before we invite go ahead, Jordan.
Is the well location marked on here anywhere? Didn't,
It is not marked. I can tell you approximately where it is.
yeah,
It's not,
so I have an idea.
we don't have a shape file of it at the county, but a good slide for that. Here we go. So it is my understanding that the well.
Okay. So that's what we would be looking at, if there was to be a secondary septic location, it would be kind of right on top of the well if they were to try to utilize that area where the
They'd be
proposed
coming to see you
addition is.
again and they'd be going to the
Well, they'd also
Board of
need-
Health too, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
state variance as well. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, one
Okay,
final question
One
to
question.
Steve. Steve, would you give us more guidance on chapter 5.6.2, which has the 8 criteria that are needed for approval? My memory is, but I need further direction, that all 8 criteria need to be satisfied.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
all right. Thank you, Aaron.
Okay, and I guess again, I'll state that I'm
Yeah.
encouraging you to have a conversation about that front yard setback and how you wish to bundle or not bundle at some point during your
Okay, at
consideration.
this point, I would invite the petitioners, Teg and Peggy Mormon, to come forward if you wish to clarify, present. Just for the record, state your address and names.
Tim Mormon, 46651 Riverview Drive.
And Peggy Mormon, same address.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So a couple of things that were mentioned, as far as the setbacks go. The house was there before any of these setbacks were made. As far as the garage goes, I don't know when those setbacks and everything were designed. The interstate came through and took a large portion of the yard with their setbacks. So there's a lot of stuff that we cannot do, because of those things. So we are trying to, and then we just recently found out that the setback from the county road and the setback from the interstate cross each other right in the middle of our house.
Is that a township road or?
Yes, one
That's a county
county
road
road and the
that runs in
interstate.
front of us.
It is because it's been referred to as a township road.
No, it's county.
It's,
It's County 12, I believe, that this,
Yeah.
right here, this road
the one in
here.
front,
The
yeah, that,
interstate is here. This is the
Yeah.
interstate.
because I'm not sure here, but I thought they referred to it as township, but the setback was referred to correctly from the county road? Aaron? Because it was always, in all these, it was always referred to as a township road. I thought it was county.
Yeah, the setbacks don't hinge on.
Oh, on the,
It hinges off the DOT.
right, but it is a county road.
I guess I had assumed it was a town road because it's not named, it's named Riverview Drive, but it may well be a county road that has a
It's the
county-
highway before the interstate went through.
Yeah, it was 61 before.
the
It's
county
still just a
plows
minor
it.
Collector, what
Yeah.
it says on here.
That's,
So that's what I was classifying it under.
The county maintains the road. So
that's kind of.
I believe it's County Highway 12.
That's what I thought. Okay,
So-
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so we had those issues. The front deck that there's an issue with, that was over, the cement steps were crumbled, they weren't usable. We just bought a used deck and put it on the front, never thought about, we had to deal with, a setback. So we are definitely willing to work with that deck
There's
if
oth-
need be.
There's other homes that have their steps right on the curb of this highway that goes. I mean,
And
Yeah.
are you guys, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dresbach at all and how it's platted out and how the homes are.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's a building that is not within that setback of the interstate, and many of them are right on top of the highway fence. We've seen several homes just recently built in
Dakota. we're right on
Dakota
the street.
that are so far, I mean, they have their garage is right on top of their drain field for that. So we know there's issues out there like that. And I'm wondering how all of these setbacks apply to a place that's platted out like Dresbach, Minnesota is. And you guys, if anyone's been familiar with all the problems we've had through the years trying to get things fixed in that town. So we would like to build an addition to our garage. I've had several falls in the past few years. I've broken a couple of bones in the past few years, and I can't do steps. And right now, the only other usable space we have in our house is the upstairs. So we'd like to incorporate part of that shop, the garage that we're building as a small room for me, so I don't have to go upstairs to use it. And we do have some other vehicles that we'd like not to have to sell in order to keep them with us and not pay. We know, understand that my health or economical may not apply here, but we'd like you guys to, consider it. What we're asking is not different than 90% of the homes on this main street in town here and along those that are on the river. So we can work with things if possible, if we can do other things, but would like you guys to please to consider our petition.
Could you explain the layout currently of your first floor, the rooms that you have on the first floor?
We have a bedroom, we have a small office on the front of the house, we have a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen.
And will the proposed sewing room be approximately the same size, larger or smaller
About the same size
than
as it
the
is,
office?
about the same size.
Probably about the same size. We didn't measure anything like that, but
Who predominantly uses the office?
Both of us.
both of us do, yeah.
Could you combine the sewing room and the office on
No.
the first floor?
Oh my gosh, it's so
No.
little. No, I mean, no. We would have to get rid of, I might as well stop sewing. And I do it for enjoyment. I have lots of grandkids and I give lots of gifts and it's a way for me to use up my retirement time that I'm not bored and, so, yes.
Go ahead, Kelsey.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, how is the garage gonna be accessed? Are you keeping that?
We're
where
opening
that
the back
road
of the
is with
existing garage
carport?
up.
It'll just pull in or are you gonna
Gonna
pull
drive
through?
straight through from the existing garage into,
Okay,
we're opening the back of the garage up.
okay. And so then where that carport is and all those cars are lined up, that's all going away? Okay.
Well, that's a little tent shed that we have to store our stuff in now because we ain't got enough room in the garage. So that's why I wanna to do this
Yeah,
addition.
you are paying for storage elsewhere right now.
Yeah.
Yes,
So that-
yes.
And as far as this impervious water, okay, I'd like someone to come through Dresbeck and look at every place in town to see how much water actually.
Folks in.
Yeah, the impervious one is, I couldn't believe when I seen this, like, what is that?
There's whole
How-
lots that are covered with buildings.
Yeah, so, and a lot of them. It's not just, so we had no idea that building an addition would create
Such a bond.
pages and pages of paperwork when 90% of it didn't apply when the house was built, when the garage was built in 1978 even. And yes, we want to add a little addition to it. It's not we're not covering the whole lot. It's not a warehouse. It's a little garage, so two old retired people can do what we love to do.
We could
So,
take all of that with the addition and stick it in Reinhardt's building right next door.
Yeah, I was going to say the lot next door looks pretty impervious.
Yes.
so,
Okay,
yeah,
Jordan,
so,
Okay, Jordan, have a question?
Was Aaron's representation of where your well is located?
The well is in the back of that tent shed.
yeah,
Okay.
right here in the corner here. Right there.
It's right in the back of that tent shed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was put there because it met the requirements away from the new sewer system we put in, because the old sewer system was in the front yard. We couldn't go there. We had to put it, so it was about the only place left.
Okay.
So,
Okay, is that, and we can, after it's, we can ask you questions but we have to ask you directly, so, yeah.
Yes,
But you'll be able to, answer questions later too. so-
yes,
Sure.
yes.
Okay, thank you. And I would entertain a motion to open it to the public.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, the motion's been made to open it to the public by Jordan and seconded by Kelsey. All those in favor of opening to the public, say aye.
aye.
Meeting is open to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to address this variance request? For the second time, is there anyone who wishes to address this variance request? And for the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to address this variance request? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Well, wait a minute, we need a motion.
I
Jordan?
will move to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, a motion been made to close the public meeting by Jordan and seconded by Ed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. The meeting is closed to the public and open to the board to discuss.
I would first move to remove number 2. Is the front yard distance from I-90. I don't think that applies here. I don't think there's access to I-90 from the property, and it's certainly
For the backyard. you mean?
not the front, yeah. So,
So in other words, that it would be moot.
correct.
Yeah. I know, I-90, I don't know who enforces that, the state or whatever, but I know when they built I-90, there's other places along there where they do have like a corner of the barn cut off and it's right on the fence line almost. So the federal government doesn't seem to object too much, so. Does anybody
I'll
want to?
second the motion.
Okay, motion was made by Jordan and seconded by Ed to remove number 2, which is the back lot setback from I-90. All those in favor, well, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. So then the second order of business is the rest of it. I would just I just want to make the statement too, is that every decision by the board is by nature subjective. That's why we're here, from each individual board member, and it does not rely on past decisions. There's no precedent. So every case is set by its own, and it doesn't set a precedent for any other case. So Ed, go ahead.
So I'll start off, Mr. Chairman. I'm
Okay.
looking, and I'm starting at my discussion on page 10. Staff report. the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. As I read this staff analysis, the last sentence at the top paragraph on page 11 is that the application is not in harmony with the.
I don't have that.
And further, there's no compliance with criteria number 1.
Oh, due to what he wrote at the bottom of the paragraph, the application is not in harmony with these purposes. In his staff analysis? In his staff analysis at the bottom, he writes it's not in harmony. Is that where you're looking?
Yes,
With those purposes, and the variance request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
that's the next one.
Mr. Chair.
I think
Right,
he's just
right, okay.
answering the question.
Okay, right,
So
right.
is it
Go
in
ahead, Aaron.
harmony? He's-
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's two different things that you have before you have my analysis and you have the draft findings. For the purposes of going through they're not always the same, I should point out.
Yes.
This is more of an analysis and these are what's being proposed. So in terms of looking at them as findings, I would use the ones from the attorney's office. If you're looking for a staff analysis, then that's what you have in your packet.
And I'm specifically referring to the professional staff analysis.
Thank you.
So since I'm not a planner, I wrote that I understand. And the analysis of the staff in this situation, application is not in harmony with the purposes listed in the various sections.
I think from what I read with it, he's talking about the impervious.
Yeah, those, yeah.
And when I was reading through this, they started out at like 27% and they're actually adding more by doing this. So they're bringing it down to just over 25%, which is the amount required. So they're so close to,
Well,
but
Now, the criteria number 1 reads, the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance.
right,
That's the last sentence.
Mhm.
right.
And that's,
And I read the
Mhm.
staff analysis, which concludes the application is not in harmony with these purposes. So I can only
Right.
read that it's not in harmony.
and that, yeah.
It needs to be in harmony.
Right.
No, that's the staff's take on it, and our job is to look at how far we are from the gas pump. So in other words, the impervious surface cannot be, but right now, they would eliminate the tent, the little shed, and that whole driveway alongside that's gravel. That would be changed into pervious surface. And it cannot, and because it cannot be met, but our job is to, as subjective looking at it, to say, well, can we, for example, the sewage, we can't meet that, right? So you have you don't have 2 places. So, but they do have a place that's working. And so our job is to, and that's what each of us has to decide subjectively, I mean, that's the purpose of the variance. And we look at, and my personal philosophy is I'll bend over and do anything backward I can to enable people to use their property that doesn't impinge on the neighbors. We have no neighbor comments whatsoever. We have, the block has been impinged on by I-90 in 1967 or wherever, you know, and they were victims of the tiny lot. Of course, they knew this when they bought it, but the impervious surface would only slightly be, maybe slightly increased with all, you know, all the improvements. But, and we can't necessarily, you know, the county highway engineer doesn't like us looking at everything else. But when we see that the pervasive thing in the neighborhood is that none of these things are kept, then subjectively, it'd be a little, for me, it'd be a little difficult on the technicality, you know. And that's the problem with findings. That's why we have court cases, you know.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Were you the septic contractor previously?
Yes.
May I ask
Go
a
ahead,
question?
yes, yes. Yeah, come to the microphone and state your name and address.
I'm Jeff Drew. I'm the owner of Septic Pros, and we're located at 5266 Jumper Road, La Crescent.
So when you did this previous septic, was it under the assumption that this is probably the last septic system that would be on this property?
Yeah, very many lots, Dresbach, Dakota, Pickwick, all them little small towns. The systems that were there obviously don't meet code, and the systems nowadays are a little bit more complex. When we put this system in, we took into account the location of the new well that they had to drill, because the old well was in the center of the lot, which made pretty much the entire lot not usable for septic. So they drilled a new well in the farthest corner, and then we met the 50-foot setback from that. But because of the smaller spaces, we did have to get variances for the building setback. But yeah, for this lot, you know, this septic will be their last one. And if in 20 years this quits, you know, they're probably looking at holding tanks. Or maybe at that time, there might be city sewer, who knows?
Yeah. Okay.
You never know.
All right. Yeah, that would pretty much cover all I have there. So moving the well there pretty much eliminated that whole corner of the property to allow a septic in a new location.
Right.
All right.
Is the well closer to the boundaries than, aren't there setbacks for a well?
I do not know those regulations.
yeah.
All I know are the setbacks from the well itself to the system components.
Any question, more question? Okay, go ahead. Are you gonna ask?
I have no questions.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep, okay.
I could be mistaken in our role here, but it was my understanding our role is to try and enforce the terms of the zoning ordinance. When a variation is requested, make the determination if the applicant is complying with all 8 of criteria.
Right.
And that's where I think you're sharing with me this subjective analysis on our part.
Yep.
Right?
Right. And that each individual has to
Yeah,
to make it right for themselves as board members and trying to balance the needs of the county, you know, and the needs of the individual.
And if, we've had it before where one of the staff members says something is not compliant, we can, as a board, vote to overturn that one
Yes.
specifically if we disagree. So it's at our,
I understand.
okay,
I just want to share that.
yeah.
I think there was an outstanding job of trying to simplify a very complicated application.
Yeah.
So I'll just state that criteria number 1, I do not believe the application is in harmony with the purposes of the ordinance.
Which, do you have a specific part that you're looking at, that, like, all of them as a whole, or just like one of the variances specifically?
Pretty much, except we've removed
Number 2, yeah. Well, we didn't remove the
Oh.
deck, we removed the
setback.
yard distance,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yes, of course, Aaron.
So playing off of the complexity of the application, on page 11 there, when you're reading that, that is the finding that is the analysis that I put together for requests number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and you removed number 2. You said it doesn't apply. So that would now simply be the analysis on 1, 4, 5, and 6, not the deck. The deck was a separate setting of findings prepared later. And in that, you have some language that relates to impervious as well as, you know, setbacks, the things that are relate to the reduction from standards they're asking
So
for.
just out of curiosity, if they removed the deck, what percentage of impervious surface would there be? Would it fall on, at 25% or under?
I mean, I guess I don't know the answer to that exactly, but
What,
you saw the
72?
numbers there. It's barely over. So it would
Yeah.
make it either below or very, very, very close.
Okay.
I think they did state that if they couldn't have the deck, Aaron, just stay there a second. Couldn't have the deck, then they would have to pour a concrete pad, which they wouldn't need for, and that would definitely be impervious. I imagine on the deck, most people, they don't, unless they're losing, it's usually pervious,
Yeah.
permeable, right. So I would-
Interestingly, there are, it's not in the Minnesota code, but in the Wisconsin code, they have language that allows decks to be considered pervious. If they have sufficient spacing. I did not find that on this side of the river, however.
Okay, so do we consider that then to be impervious?
We do.
We do.
Or I shouldn't say, it is in the report
is in
that
the
you
report.
In
received.
the
yeah.
report, but you
Okay.
can. Okay, thank you, Aaron, unless anyone has questions, okay?
So I'll continue with, on
Mhm.
page 11, number 3. The applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls and purposes to use the property in a reasonable. My overall impression of the application and the historical improvements on the property, use a simplistic metaphor, it appears to me that, we're trying to put 15 pounds in a 5-pound bag here. To accomplish that result requires all of these variances. So personally, subjectively, with the guidance of the chairman, I don't believe the uses that are being proposed highlighted on the previous improvements on the property, one without a permit or a variation. I don't think that's using this property in a reasonable.
Okay,
The number 4, variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners of the property since the enactment of the ordinance. It seems to me that the application is being made because of the previous development on the property. And now to essentially double the size of the garage is creating the special circumstances, which I think, it's simply, there's a reasonable way to use property. And in this situation, I think it's simply not reasonable.
Mhm.
And I don't think there are special circumstances existing that are unique to this property that have not been created by the applicant. If there was no garage currently, they'd be putting up a garage that perhaps would not be creating the need for a variance, but I don't know that. But to double the size of the garage, I think exacerbates an existing.
what is the size of the
I
existing
believe the
garage?
previous garage got a variance. I think it was on the list because of the setbacks from the roads and the,
The existing.
What size is the garage?
950 feet, proposed garage is 960 square feet,
Okay,
something like that, I think.
any other comments?
Yeah,
I'm just,
oh,
I'm
yeah. go ahead.
finishing up.
Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, finish up then, please.
This is a very important issue and I
Great.
want to give it
Yes.
proper consideration.
Yes.
And Aaron tells us on page 12 that the board should consider whether the variance is primarily the result of the lot's small area and proximity to roadways, or if the variance is primarily the result of the applicant's desire for a large garage. That's the top paragraph on page 12. I look at this as I recited earlier, that the variance is primarily the result of the applicant's desire for a large garage. And therefore, I don't believe there's been compliance with criteria number 4.
Okay,
And then lastly, number 7, the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. Yes, reasonable is in the subjective mind of the person looking at the application. For the reasons I recited earlier, I believe all of these requests are essentially that we're considering now self-imposed because of the sizes of what needs to be done. So those are my comments.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And you, Jordan, you had a comment?
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it is that these special conditions or circumstances were created when the city of Dresbach was platted as small city-sized lots. And then since then, they've not been provided with city-type amenities
Yes.
like city water and city sewer. So now they're forced to use up a large portion of that to have their own well and then their septic system, which was not, which was previously not taking up room on the slot. So I don't see it as necessarily their fault for wanting to use the space in their yard. So I would like to pull the deck variance. Does it have its own
Yeah, it had its own,
findings here?
yeah, he separated it out. Not sure.
Well, we can discuss that too, because it's,
I mean, I would like to just move to approve the deck.
okay,
You go to page 14, that's, the analysis starts and then there are a separate set of findings for those. That's just for the deck. Deck is referred to in your package as request number 3.
okay.
That was a motion I seconded.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion to move for approval.
The motion was made to approve the deck variance,
It's number 3.
request number 3. And seconded by Ed. Is there a discussion on it?
Would be with the findings of facts as written
Yes.
for that one.
I was curious if there was no permit for it or anything, you just popped it up, right? So it's not like you didn't get a variance, but you got a permit for the deck, or do they not need a permit
I
for a
don't
deck?
know.
Yeah, go ahead. You can answer me from there.
We talked- For that deck that replaced the steps out front of the house. So
Okay.
we said the one steps that were there were bad. We bought a used deck and we put that in place of the cement steps.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron,
that-
could you explain that permit, no permit? issue?
Yeah, is there like a minimum square footage for those, for permits?
Yes, so there would be a minimum square footage and or cost that would trigger a permit. So it may well be that no permit would have been
Okay.
required. However, even in an instance when no permit is required, the performance standards, i.e. setbacks,
Yeah.
those still apply.
I just wanted to note that if you do approve this, to make sure that you state findings for numbers 3, 4, and 7 of request number 3. And the staff report or the findings of fact is just is left to the board's discretion, so we need language.
Oh. Okay.
Jordan, could you amend your motion? Well, just to include to approve the number 3 with any conditions. Are there conditions on 3?
I feel like those are Is it different in here?
It's just separate.
Sorry for the
Yep, come on.
confusion in there. I believe there's only one condition on number 3. And it would be the standard one. The owner of the property to which the variance is issued will abide by all representations and commitments made during the permitting process, as well as before the Board of Adjustment, in accordance with the conditions to the variance. So just the standard variance condition that you're
Yeah.
usually seeing.
So your motion includes the conditions on 3 for the step?
Yes.
Okay. Do you still second it? Okay. Motion been made that the variance for number 3 for the setback variance has been made by Jordan and seconded by Ed. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of granting the variance number 3 for the steps with the conditions as stated?
Aye.
Here?
Aye.
Okay, all those, aye. That variance is granted. We'll move on to the other one. I just want to say for myself personally, and maybe because I deal with bigger garages, the garage is really kind of tiny. You know, my parents built a 2-car garage way back. And I think it's 32 long and 24 wide. And you get, but I mean, as far as footprint, for me, it's nothing compared to the buildings that are built. And so like, say, doubling the size or not, I don't think is that, I think it just really helps them make good use of their property. The medical reasons and other things like that, it's not economic. It's, to help people, I think the comprehensive plan is to probably help people stay in their homes and use them. So, I'm just, my take on it.
Mr. Chair, can I interject for
Yep.
a moment again?
Yes.
So the deck variance that you just took action on, we do need to make some findings that were kind of left to the board's discretion.
Okay.
1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Well, if you turn to page, of your proposed findings, if you turn to page 3,
Is that
On the
the,
draft, the handout?
draft findings, yeah, the
Okay.
draft watermark.
okay.
And at the bottom, it should say, as to variance request number 3. Is that right? Everyone's seeing that?
Yep.
Okay. So then flip over and we're going to go through the draft findings that were prepared for you. Numbers 3 and 4, there was no draft language. It was our position that these were entirely subjective determinations of reasonableness that are best suited for you to make. So you would need to come up with the reasons for those two, during the hearing here today.
Okay, 3 and 4. The applicant has established that practical difficulties in complying with the official controls and proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. And the variance request is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners of the property since the enactment of the ordinance. We kind of into the same thing there, but,
Why aren't those statements good enough alone to be findings? 3 and 4. Why can't we just use those as the findings?
Yes.
I'm asking whoever wants to answer.
Basically, those describe the situation, but they don't say that it's a practical difficulty. So we would want to find that these conditions, as specifically named out of those that you feel are practical difficulties or other things that you consider practical difficulties.
You think we need specifics to explain the practical difficulties rather than stating the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties? I would think that statement is adequate.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying, is saying that these are practical difficult. You find that these are practical difficulties. But that language isn't found in the planning report. It just tells you what the circumstances are.
So,
Make sure we're all on the same page. If we use the language on the draft findings for the deck on page 4, where it states number 3, the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official controls and proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. That
Right.
that should be adequate for a finding, shouldn't it, Steve?
Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right one here.
Yeah, fine if you want.
Do we need to state specifically why, like the setback requirement or
We typically
That-
don't do that.
So I'm sorry.
I don't.
Generally, a finding isn't just repeating what the standard is. There would be a reason to substantiate why the standard is met.
I mean,
So,
one could potentially be maybe that she has trouble with stairs, so the deck is safer. So that would be a practical difficulty, maybe.
And
and I think,
they do, generally people have a right to the first floor of their house, access, you know. And since the concrete steps were deteriorating and dangerous, this was probably a more economical way to get there and land.
Steve, could you just make a few simple recommendations that we could add to 3 and 4 then?
well,
Would you
so.
state that they are?
Yeah, so first, the staff report that I have for number 3 says the applicant would like to retain a deck that was placed without a permit. That's how that starts. Is that the section you're looking at?
Yeah,
Okay. I think the discussion you're having is along the right track. What is listed here as the deck being replaced with concrete stairs that were already there and was an authorized encroachment, is not subject to setback standards, is basically another factor is the extends beyond the previous footprint of the stairs, and that's where the reasonableness comes in. So it extends beyond it's an previous existing use, but now it extends beyond that previous existing use, and then you would need to find that that's reasonable. It creates a hardship.
the reason I think that it's reasonable is because they were able to find a used deck and place that in place of the stairs for safety reasons, obviously, because the current stairs were deteriorating.
Can you give us the language?
I think you should come
Yeah.
up with the language and I could help you craft it.
I think just state that the applicant has established and that, and not that the various request is due to specials, and just saying there are special conditions. That's it. You can use the words right there, except take out the variance request is due, and just say they are.
Agree.
There are special conditions. Do they want to make a motion to that?
I make the motion that the finding for number 3 be as chairman just recited.
Okay. And for 4,
For number 4, I would use some of the language I used in my statement previous to making this motion regarding the platting of the city. And
or you probably don't have to give the reason, just say it is. That the board has decided is due to special conditions.
yeah, I would be fine with that.
Okay. Is there a second? Or Jordan, you seconding?
Yeah,
that?
so it's
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The conditions or the findings 3 and 4 are approved as verbally stated. For the record,
Then we need number 7 as well.
okay, what's that?
Uh,
Oh, there, yeah, I see, okay. And that's where it's, objective.
Yeah,
So if you want to make a motion that,
yes, I would say it would be unreasonable to make them replace a deck that already replaced
Okay,
failing
yeah.
stairs. So it seems that the variance would be the most reasonable way to make that front
Yeah.
entrance to their house safe.
What's the, the variance cannot be, that's kind of whatever, isn't it? Variance cannot be alleviated by reasonable other than, okay, wait a minute. How's it, 7, how does that read? We would just, you could just say the variance, well, yeah, cannot be alleviated by other than a variance. And there's a minimum. You can prove it just as it is. 7,
Yeah,
So moved.
okay. You moved
Second.
and second, okay, Jordan, Ed has moved and Jordan seconded that the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Number 7 is alleviated. Okay. Thank you. Now. Well, if there isn't any more discussion, do we have any motions?
well, we'd have to draft
Do we have to do something?
findings for
Well, let's see here.
this, for that.
Oh, yeah, board to declare
Warrants 3, 4, and
4
7.
and 6. 4 and 6. Oh, no, yeah. Wait, what? Yeah, wait, page 3 of our, oh, wait a minute, we got all several of them, don't we? Yeah,
Yeah, so
3,
And
4,
number 1.
3, 4, 7. Am I on the right?
we just did 3.
Oh, yeah.
So we have
Get on the
1,
other one.
4, 5, and 6, and then for those, we need findings for 3, 4, and 7, yeah.
And we're on
Could we,
variance on 4 and 6.
could we consider whether we're going to approve or deny? And then make the, approval or denial.
That's possible. So. Let's see, we would have to have a motion to approve variance request as stated. And and which ones are we approving?
Well, I just wanted to make sure that however you state the motion, it's a conditional approval or disapproval or whatever pending your agreement on the language needed for the findings of fact. Because you don't want to make a ruling
Right,
before you've
okay,
determined
okay.
and made your finding.
What does everyone think?
I agree with Steve.
Okay. Does anyone, or else you just want to, well, we have to, yeah,
Well,
we're determining
is
first,
he-
yeah.
I'll get the ball moving. I move that requests 1, 4, 5, and 6, if those are the right,
Yeah, that's stuff.
Yeah, that would
I
be
think they are, or no, wait, yeah.
Hmm.
7 was the steps.
1, 4, 5, and 6 be
Yeah.
denied.
Okay. Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion has died.
Now we get to work on the findings.
Yeah, or we can make a motion to approve. And then conditionally, and then work on the agreeing on the findings.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve variance requests 1, 4, 5, and 6. Amending the findings of fact. For number 3, the applicant has established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. I would agree that they have established there are practical difficulties due to their lot size, their septic placement, their well placement. And then I would also apply that to number 4. It is due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners of the property since enactment of the ordinance. I would say that that the circumstances and special conditions, go back to my previous comment about the lot sizes being platted as city lot sizes and the city not providing sewer and water to these city-sized lots.
And
And then for
7,
number 7, it cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, unless the city were to provide sewer and water to their house.
yeah. And that's all that is. Oh,
Also,
oh, 4 and 6, yeah.
the interstate was ran
Yeah.
through there, after their lot was established.
And then number 1 under 4 and 6.
Do we need to do that separate, or is that all 4 and 6 are, would be included in the motion I just made, correct?
I think.
Yeah, I think so.
They would be independent findings required, though the standard is very similar to the one that you.
4 and 6,
Yeah.
okay.
I think just.
We kind of copy paste that over to that one?
Yep. Well, your motion
Ooh.
included to include those, what, one,
Well, number 4 and number 6, it looks like we have to do number 1 as well.
yeah, I mean, you can do it right now and include them all together.
Yeah,
So just keep going on 1, that they want the board to determine the conditions causing.
yeah, I think my previous language would cover that as
Yeah,
well.
I think it can be adopted just as they,
Yeah, it was not caused by actions of the applicant, it was caused by
Yeah.
poor planning a long time ago.
okay,
So then, just out of curiosity, because number 1 is underlined, but then it does say, according to Ed in the paperwork at the bottom, that it is not in harmony and it's underlined, do we need to change the wording
Yes,
in
in
that
fact,
one too?
given how many are at play here and
Yeah.
we try to keep it us all straight, it might be a good practice just to quickly go through each one to make sure that,
separately.
yes.
Okay,
Okay,
so
well,
we're
if you-
starting on page
Yeah.
number 4 of this draft findings of fact. Okay,
I think
Yeah,
we're around
page
that.
1, because
One.
page 1 in the.
page
in the
1,
book.
right,
Yeah, maybe it's best.
culminates all of them except for number 2, because we got rid of it.
Yeah. Well, here it said we got 1, 4, 5, and 6, and then over here we got 4 and 6 as more
Right.
additional.
I think,
So you could keep 1, 4, 5, and 6 together and then also do, and then do
That is-
another one for 4 and 6.
Yeah, that's, okay,
Yeah.
that's where I was.
And like you were doing 1, 4, 5, and 6, we have to do it twice the way it looks because they're different conditions.
Yeah, and I think this is what you're saying, but I wanted to make sure that number 1 in the current language says it's not in harmony, and so
Okay.
you would have to address that as well.
right,
Okay,
Oh,
that's where I'm
no,
curious, because.
well, we're mixing up requests and variance requests.
Yeah.
We're mixing up conditions and, or the findings.
Oh,
and-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, so 1, 4, 5, and 6 are only ones that, well, yeah, I see, we still have,
There's, this one here is for 1, 4, 5, and 6, which
Yeah.
is what we're approving, so, but it says not, so we have to change the wording, so if
Okay.
we want to
yeah.
approve it, so that it is in harmony.
and where is, we got 2 different things here.
And from what I get out of number 1, the biggest thing is the impervious surface standards. Because of this, stormwater, and the septic. And in my opinion,
Are we working on 2 different things here?
well, I'm looking
Yeah,
at the
kind of.
findings of fact
yeah, so we're on
right
the
here.
new and improved
Yeah.
draft findings of fact.
Where it's underlined that it's not,
Oh, but the line says it is. in harmony.
right, that's where we all got confused, because
Oh,
bottom
oh.
it says it's not and it's
Yeah,
underlined.
but all,
We have
but,
to change
well,
the.
yeah, but we don't even have to use that language. All we have to do is approve one, the actual finding, like we're going through and deciding. You know, the variance
Right.
is in harmony. I mean, it's whatever, but that's what we say it is. And we don't have to explain it. We just say one, two, the dark print.
I agree.
We just do the, and then, and as Jordan is going through here, then we're adopting in this, we're saying that the board to determine, and we're saying, yeah, we determined that 3 and 4.
Okay, so
and
we don't
7.
actually have to talk about it and
Uh,
vote to change the language if it
um,
is in harmony. We just
Uh,
have to.
no, because it says it, yeah, you know, it says it is in harmony. Here's they saying it is not in harmony, but that's not we're not agreeing with that. So if we're gonna state the findings, we'll just say as they're stated in the black headline print, those are all fulfilled. Okay. Does the motion still stand? And then I think we have to go and, but then the other ones are separate on 4 and 6, we're different. But let's just do the ones where we have to determine it.
Okay.
And so we determine that, not just ignore the staff comments.
All right,
That these are the actual, we're saying that these are the findings that is the state template. We're just saying they're all filled.
okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah,
And you'll
that I will accept that, yes.
improve it. Okay, the motion has been made by Jordan to approve 1, 4, 5, and 6, and that all the findings have been met and stated.
With the
And,
conditions, correct?
and with all the conditions stated. And Ed has seconded it.
Steve,
And,
are we missing anything?
I think you're good.
Okay,
and is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Hi,
Aye, all those opposed say nay. Oh, sorry, nay. Okay, the motion has carried 3-1. Ed has said nay. And the next order of business is the variance request 4 and 6 with the conditions, different conditions. And so the condition, number 1, you want to go through it. The condition causing demonstrated hardship to unique to the property and was not caused by the actions of the applicant. Is that okay? Okay, Jordan, and okay.
yes.
So we'll say that's true. And what else do we have to try? Is that the only thing that the board has to determine?
I believe so. I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So we essentially have already approved 4 and 6, but we're saying that all the conditions, with the findings conditions as demanded by the state have been met. Do we have a motion?
And there will be,
And-
obviously number
Okay,
2 will
that's
be
the thing.
removed from there, but
Yeah.
Number 3, you might address, it's proposed use. It says there are reasonable uses that would not require a variance. You need to find that there are no reasonable uses that do not require a variance.
Yeah, and so we're agreeing that that is true. Yeah. Essentially agreeing that we've met these additional findings. So all those in favor, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed say nay.
Nay.
Nay, okay. Ed has said nay, and Jordan and Robert and Kelsey have voted yes. So the variance is granted. And I have to read, did we cover everything? Did we cover all the things except the statement of regress, et cetera? This one?
I think you're all set, yeah.
Okay, then I will read the Board of Adjustments statement. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment and granting variances or in hearing appeals for any administrative order requirement decision or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department or board of commissioners of jurisdiction or if the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days. After receipt of the notice of a decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered that the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or paying representation of counsel for the petitioner. The next order of business is docket number BOA 72224, number 2, to consider the petition of Jeff DeRue, contractor, and Betty Ann Walker, property owner, regarding a variances for setbacks from a structure. Aaron.
Okay, well, this one will not have as many moving parts. Yeah. Walk in the park compared to what you just handled. Okay, so in this case, applicant is Jeff Drew. He's the licensed septic contractor who's working with Betty Ann Walker, on whose behalf Jeff brings the application. And here they're looking for 2 variances. They are to reduce the minimum setback required between a septic tank and a structure, and to reduce the minimum setback required between a septic tank and a property line. So we've got, again, a smaller lot with an existing structure. In this case, it is not county zone, it's municipally zoned, but we handle the septic for them, and they are not a sewered community. And they are seeking to replace a non-compliant septic system. So as I said, 2 requests: reduce the minimum setback distance between an absorption area and a structure, and the absorption area, or I'm sorry, that is incorrect. It is to reduce the minimum setback between a tank and a structure. This is a holding tank.
Right.
Same distance applies. A standard applies. It's not the same distance, but a standard still applies. And to reduce the minimum setback between a tank and a property line. So here you see the turquoise polygon is the single-family dwelling, which in this case is a converted church. And there you see the orange polygon being the proposed septic tank location. Here you're seeing the variance request of 2 feet to reduce the distance required from the structure, and they're proposing to place it at 8 feet. And then the same image with the variance of 8 feet from the property line setback depicted. They're proposing to set the tank at 2 feet. We had this conversation during the last request. It's, do we want to consider these 2 requests individually, or shall we bundle them? In this case, I've presented them to you as bundled, so you would make one set of findings for the entire request. We're bundling them through the normal variance standards and through the septic variance standards. So municipally zoned, there you see the lot highlighted in Dresbach, Dakota, in Dakota. And then you see some county zoning over the Mississippi that is agriculturally zoned, but the zoning here is not done by the county. Here we've got the oblique aerial imagery of the city of Dakota. And there is a non-compliant septic system on this lot currently that they seek to remedy. So a church, again, built before septic standards were in place. Church has been converted to a dwelling. The aspect or the view we're having here, you see the white protrusion out of the yard. That is approximately where the holding tank is proposed. The city of Dakota indicated support for the petition, and no comments have been received from the public. So consider all the information and testimony before making your findings. We've provided you an analysis of the approval criteria, and the county attorney's office has provided you draft findings. And should you recommend approval, there are conditions proposed for your consideration. Questions?
Any questions for Aaron? Go ahead, Jordan.
Holding tanks are not prohibited, correct?
Well,
They're
there's a
discouraged.
discussion of that in your staff report. The word prohibited is used in that discussion in the ordinance. I make the case that given the context of that language preceding and following that, that it explains the conditions under which they're they're allowable, so that's just perhaps an unfortunate word choice there.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Where
Dan.
the
Oh, go ahead,
current
Kelsey.
septic system is, or isn't there?
I will let Jeff
Okay.
speak to that when he comes up.
Okay. Yeah, no more questions for Aaron?
Is there, do you have a well location? Is that, I'm assuming opposite the opposite corner of the current or the proposed tank?
Again, I'll default to
Okay.
Jeff on that
Okay.
question.
Sounds good.
And so, okay, thank you, Aaron. And then, so the applicant, if you wish to come forward and present the case. Or just, yeah, however you wish. Okay, state your name and address.
Betty Ann Walker, 180 Washington Street, Dakota.
Okay. And I guess, is it pretty well covered by staff or, actually, yeah,
I need you.
yeah, Jeff, that's.
So I'm Jeff Drew, owner of Septic Pros. Yeah, the applicant is looking to replace an existing septic system that's non-compliant. Due to the small lot size, locations of the well on their property and neighboring wells, the only system allowed for this site would be a holding tank. The holding tank will be located just a little over 50 feet from the well on the property. And because of that setback and then the location of the property lines off the two crossroads, doesn't leave a lot of room. So we're looking to reduce those setbacks to fit the tank in the yard.
So that's essentially it.
Pretty much it.
Okay, any questions for? Okay, if not, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, I guess we opened it to the public if we have a motion. So moved. Okay,
Second?
okay, the motion has been made by Ed and seconded by Jordan to open it to the public. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The meeting is open to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to address petition 7/22/24 2 for Betty Ann Walker? For the second time, is there anyone who wishes to address the petition before us, docket number BOA 7/22/24 2? For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to address the petition before us, BOA 7/22/24 2? If not, all those, I'd entertain a motion.
I will move to close
Okay.
the public hearing.
Okay, motion been made by Jordan and seconded by Ed to close the meeting to the public. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. The meeting is closed to the public and open to the board for discussion.
I move approval of the application, including the findings of fact that would be good to us.
Okay,
Can I assist you in walking through the two findings where we need to
Absolutely.
create them here?
Yep.
In real time. So. Finding number 8 talks about that prohibited, not a prohibited use. First, I'll start by saying it's not in the floodplain. And then we have that conversation about, is it prohibited? We have 4 prohibitions listed in the ordinance under the prohibited section. And then we have that word prohibited sneak in the conversation about holding tanks. As I said earlier, I'm contending that it's not the, I'm looking at page number 2 on the proposed, on the draft findings, on finding number 8. Yep, it says board to determine.
You're focusing on the word prohibited.
Yes, I guess I'm suggesting that the board would adopt the position I took, that the word prohibited as it's used in relation to holding tanks doesn't prohibit the use.
Well, the word prohibited isn't contained in paragraph 8.
Right, it's not in the finding, it's a,
I know.
I guess the word prohibited would be a proxy for have the effect of allowing any use not allowed in the zoning district.
Can we use paragraph 8 as it reads currently?
You can.
That's what I
Yeah.
included in my.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And then number 4, same exact concept, just in a different section of the ordinance, in the septic variance
Oh, yeah,
standards.
that's it.
And I think you
That's
could take
true,
the same
yeah.
approach if you chose to.
Adopting these findings in this handout.
Good. I think you were all set.
Do we need a second?
Um,
Did I already do
Yeah,
that?
you motion right, Ed? Okay, we need a second. Kelsey has to second it.
Second.
Okay. Kelsey has second something. Okay. The motion has been made to approve this variance request with all the findings and conditions stated. And that's it. Is there any discussion? More? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. All those opposed say nay. The variance is granted, and thank you for coming. And I have to read the statement again. Put a stopwatch on it. Okay. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment and granting variances and hearing appeals from any administrative order, grant decision or determination shall be final except any aggrieved person or person for any department, board, or commission of jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days. After receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by the counsel for the petitioner. The next order of business is number 3. Agenda. Which is to consider the petition of Larson Septic Contractor and Timothy and Lisa Whitehead property owners for a septic variance. This is docket number BOA 72224, number 3, and Olivia is presenting.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So this variance we're looking at is the request for relief from the ordinary high water standards, which typically require 50 feet from that level to a soil treatment area, and they're requesting 30 feet. There you go. Okay. So a little bit about the site. It is in Dresbach Township, Section 20. You can see in the bottom left there, that's the township overview. Their address is 31008 on Old Mill Road. So this request is going to be a replacement system. There is an existing system on site. The reason for this was a point of sale process that triggered the need for the replacement. The property transferred. There were contractors out on site, and based on the soils work, it was determined that the existing system would most likely not be in compliance, which would require replacing it. So the design that we got was a type 4, which is an advanced design, which would allow for treatment in ground rather than having to resort to holding tanks like a lot of the smaller lots in these communities have to do. So looking at the site plan, this would be the proposed system. You can see there the septic tanks would be closer to the dwelling with the dispersal bed towards the river. It would be a septic pump. There'd be a UV treatment component, and it would be a pre-treatment, so it would allow for less separation and a smaller size than a traditional system would.
Can you explain details in general of this type of system? What is a dispersal bed?
So that is an at-grade, so essentially it's lines in the ground that the effluent would go into, and then it would be dispersed. That's eventually where the wastewater would end up, is in that area, once it'd gone through the tanks for pre-treatment and the UV treatment. So the smaller left kind of highlights the existing system in the black. It's a bit hard to see, but essentially it was one tank to an at-grade, and they're proposing a couple of more tanks to a similar at-grade, but with the pre-treatment. The tanks have been a little bit reconfigured since that site plan was created, but the larger picture on the right is a little bit not to scale compared to the other one, but essentially it's showing you that the tanks are going to be closer to the house. And then that new system would be within their current grass area. That existing system would have to be removed in order to fit the new system, but they would be able to achieve treatment on site rather than holding tanks, like I said. I should note too that the well is on both of those drawings. There is a 100-foot setback requirement from the well to the soil treatment area. They would not meet that. So one of the conditions has been drafted for this variance to require a well variance be granted. So some site overview photos. So this is looking from the corner of the house to the proposed soil treatment area. You can see it's currently a grassy area. Again, this is looking towards the northwest at this point. Similar viewpoint, but this is where the bed would be located. They'd have to take out a little bit of the landscaping and fire pit area in order to fit the system. This would be looking the opposite way towards the southeast where the new septic tanks would be going. And then the bed there to the left of those. So some of the considerations, the reason for the variance would be the ordinary high water level. It is located in shoreland and floodplain, so it gives a couple of more considerations to how the system is designed. It'd be considered a type 4, like I mentioned, so it's an advanced system, which means that it requires an advanced designer to actually do the design for the system. And they've contracted with G Cubed, which is a local contractor to do the work. And then Larson Septic, who's listed on the petition, is going to be the one that would be installing it. The existing system is assumed to be non-compliant based on soils work. And then, as I mentioned, the existing well has limited casing, which would require a bigger setback of 100 feet. The contractor did attend the township meeting. The form was submitted and the township has indicated that they have no comments regarding the request. So our recommendation would be to consider all materials and testimony before making findings that support your decision. The analysis and draft findings do support granting the variance, and should you decide to approve it, we've drafted 3 conditions for your consideration, one of those being that well variance, which is technically approved by Winona County, but consent is given from the Department of Health at the state level in order to make that decision. So any questions for me?
Olivia, in general, what is the purpose of the setback from the river? Septic systems.
To maintain an adequate distance from sensitive features.
So that effluent
Doesn't go
would not
Oh, it's right.
Department of Health. very-
Yeah.
In theory, right, but when you look at the site plan, let me pull it back up. You can see that even though it is relatively close to the river, it has quite a bit of separation in terms of elevation.
But the reason we have setbacks is to hopefully not allow effluent to go into.
Right.
Totally lost my train of thought. Never mind.
Do you know what the normal high water level is? That's the.
I don't think I have that elevation written down. Can see it on the contour.
When
Where it
was
normally
that
is.
picture taken? Do you know?
When?
Yeah, like was
The
it during
actual
our current flooding?
the
I'm just
actual photo?
curious. Yeah, I'm just curious if that was like during the high water this year or not.
Yeah, so the actual photo with like the red circles was during the high water,
Okay,
but the aerial is a standard
okay.
year.
Is, I suppose you would know that it has historically ever flooded when it hit 21 in Winona?
I don't
mean, it
believe
has to go
so.
by elevation feet other than, like Winona, it's, I don't know. What's the definition of normal high water? Do you know? Is it like flood stage or?
Ordinary high water, we either use a change in vegetation, so if we're out on site, it's aerial or it's visual. You normally see where that vegetation occurs. Otherwise, DNR hydrologist has input too. They did not respond to our notice, so I don't have that. But when we were on site, we did go down by the bank and use that to determine.
And that was quite a bit lower?
Yeah, I mean, it's if we count, these are 2-foot contours. I mean, they're a little bit shaded, but 12 to 14 feet.
Yeah.
I would say.
As part of the septic permit comply and regulations and standards, is there anything in there about the landscaping after it's over, like during the process of putting it in, since it's so close to the river, in terms of sediment or any sort of runoff during the process if it rains a lot into the water?
From the top of the system?
Well, while they're digging or doing anything, is there any sort of
Like erosion control?
standards for like being that close to the river they have to comply with in terms of runoff of,
Erosion control?
yeah, thank you, erosion control or any of the stuff falling into the river or anything like that?
We do have erosion control measures that would be implemented anytime there's like a land disturbing activity. So I would think in this instance, with them being this close and being in shoreline and floodplain, that would be something we would consider.
Okay, and so is that listed under one of these conditions and it's not just like detailed mentioned, or is that something that we need to add specifically as a condition?
It's in the zoning ordinance.
It is.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Olivia? If not, thank you.
Thank you. The property owner is here as well. If you have any
Okay.
questions for them.
And at this time, if the property owner or the applicants wish to present any more information, they may come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Lisa Whitehead, and it's 31008 Old Mill Road.
Okay,
So I guess a couple things I wanted to discuss. I don't know if this is relevant or not, so please forgive me. It's my first time being in a hearing like this, and we just bought the house, so we're still learning a lot. But so we learned that apparently back in 2005, the previous owners, Bruce and Jennifer Nordine, submitted an elevation certificate to FEMA, and this adjusted our property from being in a flood zone to being out of it. And so that had the direct effect of us not needing to have special flood insurance upon purchase of the home. So I guess the elevation is quite high. I mean, it's something like 17 feet, I think, up from even with the flooding that we've had recently. So that's
yeah.
pretty considerable. I guess the other thing I wanted to discuss, and I don't know if this is relevant also, is the nature of the type of tank that we're proposing to put in, that it's plastic, basically. It's non-permeable. So I'm wondering if that has any chance for consideration, considering it's not like a standard concrete tank that could be more easily intruded by retrograde water. Or this would be considered a little bit more safe. So I was thinking this was a way to mitigate the risk, you know, considering we are right, of course, on the water and we want to take good care of our property and, you know, be good stewards of the environment as well. So we're hoping that that coupled with the UV light also helping to mitigate the effluent being, you know, much more safe and healthy, even if the water level were to come up considerably. So this is all that I can speak to, I suppose.
okay.
What-
Any questions for?
Well, and you probably may not know the answer to this, but do you know what size the tanks are per the amount of rooms in your household?
Yeah, we're actually having one that's a little bit smaller than what I would like, to be honest with you. It is, what was it? It's supposed to be 1,000 gallons, I think. I'm sorry, I can't speak to it exactly and be definitive. It might be in the documentation, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay.
Forgive me.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is like the smallest we could possibly do. Like, this is going to rip up our entire backyard. We're going to lose most of the fire pit. It's going to be a tremendous mess, basically, but we're very committed to doing it and doing it safely as opposed to having a holding tank.
Any other questions for Lisa? Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Lisa.
thank you.
Yep. And then I would consider a motion.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second?
Okay, the motion was made to open the meeting to the public by Jordan and seconded by Kelsey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Those opposed say nay. It is open to public. Is there anyone who wishes to address the petition docket number BOA 72224, number 3? Yes, please come forward, state your name and address. For the record.
It's Peggy Mormon, address 46651 Riverview Drive, Dresbeck, Minnesota. I just want to state that in previous years, Dresbeck has had an ongoing fight to get city sewer in. It would have alleviated all of these issues, almost all of these issues within the area in which Mrs. Whitehead is proposing to build the system. So being able to do what she can, what's allowed to be done in order to help with the environment and take care of things that the city itself, Dresbach would not. We don't believe the county was of valuable use while we were trying to fight all of these things. So as a resident of Dresbach, I would like to state that I would say yay to this system. Sorry, I don't know the proper language, but just wanted to voice my opinion that I feel that she's within a good steward to do these things.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And for the third and final time, is there anyone else who wishes to address this petition of Tim and Lisa Whitehead, BOA 7/22/24, number 3?
I'll
If
move
not,
to close the public hearing.
Second.
okay, the motion been made by Jordan and seconded by Kelsey to close the meeting to the public. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The meeting is closed to the public and open to the board.
I move approval of the application, including the findings and
Okay,
I will second that.
second.
I want to say I think this is a good way to do it, given the circumstances. These type of systems are pre-treating everything that's going up to that bed anyway.
Right,
So
yeah.
should there be high water in that area, at least the affluent has already been treated.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor to the motion as stated before, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The variance is granted, and I will read. Yes, I have to read yet. As soon as I find it, Eric. Okay. Well, here I have it right there. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment and granting variances or in hearing appeals for any administrative order, requirement, decision, determination shall be final except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days. After receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact, any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at that public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by counsel for the petitioner. Next order of business, number 4.
Hey, well, good afternoon. In this last variance request, it is a variance to allow a new accessory structure, a detached shed/garage, 54 feet from the center line of a township road instead of the required 65. This would be pursuant to 10.772 of the zoning ordinance. This request happens to take place in Richmond Township. And get this to work. There we go.
Thank you all for coming.
The applicants, Mark and Janice Irwin, they own lots, I believe, 2 and 3, of Block 1 of Marysvale subdivision number 2. It's in Richmond Township. And this is a GIS rendering with the red just kind of roughly showing where they'd like to place this detached shed. Currently, there was a dog kennel and dog house that was there that they wish to remove. The applicants have submitted a sketch in a rendering of what type of structure that they would like to place. In some photos showing the terrain, you can see where the kind of the exposed areas where the kennel and the doghouse was, and essentially this 16 by 24 would sit over the top of that. It kind of the different views is kind of showing that this is on an elevation or contour that's very similar to the existing building, the existing house that's there. As you look kind of to the left and to the right on the top, you can see that there is considerable slope and grade. I do have some LiDAR elevation maps that correspond. The bottom right is essentially panning where the structure would be in comparison to the house. So it's essentially trying to take advantage of the existing grade. This is showing the Township Road. This is Mary's Hillview Road, looking to the upper left picture is showing what it looks like as it's going to the south or further up into that subdivision. The one to the right is showing a view from the center of the road, looking at where the existing shed would be. And the lower left is showing back to the north as you're looking towards 61 along that Township Road. The existing contours, again, showing roughly the 54 feet from the center of the road and showing where the structure would be. The purple line would show roughly what the required setback is, the 65 feet. So if you were to kind of add the 16 by 24, it would be in that general vicinity that has been previously disturbed. In the contours, that's 10 feet between the yellows, and then the brown that you see that are in between the yellows are representing 2 feet changes. As mentioned in the staff report, the applicants have 3.5 acres with these two lots. But just that yard area that's surrounding south of the existing house is about what they maintain for lawn. When you get outside of that 3.5 acres, it gets tremendously steep. It would be considered bluff at that point. So the applicants are trying to take advantage of their yard space that they have available, and most of the other yard encompasses their septic system and the well on the other side. The applicants did meet with Richmond Township this month, and they indicated support for the petition as requested. Zoning district, again, is UR, urban residential. The applicants also do have portions of property that are considered Mississippi River bluffs because of the steep slopes and the steep change in terrain. It's also shoreland because it's within 1,000 feet of the Mississippi of the site. Staff has presented this as a favorable recommendation with the findings as indicated, and the staff has indicated the 2 standard conditions that reflect that. I guess, any questions?
Any questions for Eric?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Rick, could you go back to a couple of slides and show us the one that has the purple and the red line? Go forward now. Can you just explain the red line and the purple line again for me?
The red line is roughly the property line.
Yes.
The purple line is extrapolating to roughly 65 feet from the center of that road. This bar shows approximately the 54-foot request that they would like to build. That's 16 by 24, approximately right in this area.
So it's an 11-foot request, basically.
Correct.
And from a practical standpoint, if it went further to, as we look at this, to the left, to comply with the setback, would that intrude on the yard? Is that the issue?
Yes, it starts to put it down, slope down in a very undesirable setting. There'd have to be retaining walls and a lot more fill brought in. We're going to be doing that.
Thank you.
Eric, are those trees all along the road?
Yeah,
Yeah, like, yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions for Eric? If not, thank you, Eric.
You bet.
And is the applicant here, wish to make a presentation? You're fine, okay, yeah, you don't have to, yeah. Okay. Okay. Second, okay. Okay, the motion has been made, Jordan, and seconded by Ed to open the meeting to the public. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Look at myself. Okay, the meeting is open to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to address the petition before us? BOA number 4, 7/22/24. Is there, second time, is there anyone who wishes to address the petition before us? For Mark and Jan Grew? And for the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to address this petition before us at this time? If not, all those in favor to close the meeting, well,
I'll make a
Vote,
motion to close the
motion.
public hearing.
Kelsey.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Jordan and seconded by Kelsey to close the meeting to the public. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Meeting is closed to the public and open to the board.
I move approval of the application, including the findings, and if there are any conditions, the conditions.
Okay,
Second.
second. Okay, the motion's been made by Ed to approve the variance as requested with the conditions and the findings stated. Is there any, and seconded by Kelsey, is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The variance is granted. And thank you for coming. I have to read my spiel here. All right, the spiel. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final except any agreed person or persons or any department, board, or commission of jurisdiction of the state shall have right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of this decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party who would like to submit an appeal to the decision rendered at the public hearing must do so to the district court. Planning and Environmental Services is not responsible for filing the appeal or obtaining representation by counsel for the petitioner. Next order of business is what?
A motion to adjourn.
Okay, making it.
We'll make that.
Second.
Okay, motion been made by Jordan and seconded by Ed to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Meeting is officially